It is March 9th, 1974. A man steps out of the Philippine jungle. He is wearing a pressed military uniform, his rifle is loaded, his sword hangs at his side, and he has absolutely no idea that the war he has been fighting ended 29 years ago. To understand what Hiro Onoda did, you first have to understand what Hiro Onoda was made to become. The year is 1944. Japan is bleeding. The Pacific War is turning against the empire. Island by island, beach by beach, American forces are pushing west with terrifying momentum, and Imperial Japan knows the mathematics are turning ugly. They are not losing battles, they are losing the war, and they know it. Into this desperate calculation steps a young intelligence officer named Hiro Onoda. 22 years old, sharp, disciplined, ideologically bulletproof. He has been trained at the Nakano School, Japan's elite military intelligence academy, where officers aren't taught to fight and die. They are taught to fight and survive, to wage shadow war, to melt into terrain and bleed the enemy from the darkness for as long as it takes. In December 1944, Onoda is deployed to Lubang Island, a small strategically positioned island in the Philippines, roughly 75 miles southwest of Manila. His orders are delivered by Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, and they are precise: sabotage enemy operations, disrupt supply lines, and under absolutely no circumstances, is he to surrender. Those last 4 words will echo for 3 decades. Onoda arrives on Lubang to find a garrison already fraying at the edges. He is ordered not to throw away their lives in futile last stands. He takes to the hills with a small band of soldiers, eventually 4 men, and begins doing exactly what the Nakano School trained him to do: watching, waiting, striking in the dark. Then August 1945 arrives. On the 6th, a single American bomb erases Hiroshima. On the 9th, Nagasaki. On the 15th, Emperor Hirohito addresses the Japanese people by radio for the very first time in history and tells them the war is over. Japan surrenders unconditionally on September 2nd aboard the USS Missouri. On Lubang Island, the jungle doesn't get the memo, or rather, it does. Leaflets rain down from Allied aircraft. They flutter through the canopy like paper birds landing in the mud and the ferns. Onoda picks one up, he reads it, and he puts it down. Propaganda. That is his conclusion. That is the only logical conclusion, he tells himself, because the alternative is impossible. Japan does not surrender. Japan does not break. This is a psychological operation, an Allied trick to flush soldiers out of hiding so they can be captured or killed. He has been trained to expect exactly this. He files it away as enemy deception and goes back to his watch. For months, this logic holds. For years, this logic calcifies. By 1950, his group has shrunk. One man, Private Yuichi Akatsu, broke away and surrendered to Filipino authorities in 1950, eventually returning to Japan. Then in 1954, Corporal Shoichi Shimada is shot dead during a skirmish with a Filipino patrol. And in 1972, 27 years into their private war, Private Kenshichi Kozuka is killed during a raid on a local rice supply. He is 43 years old. Now Onoda is alone. Think about what that means for a moment. Think about what it costs a man to watch his last companion fall in a jungle on an island that the world stopped caring about 3 decades ago. Onoda does not grieve, or if he does, he buries it somewhere beneath the mission. He dresses Kozuka's body in full military uniform. He renders honors, and then he disappears back into the trees. Meanwhile, the outside world is not silent. The Japanese government, embarrassed, bewildered, and increasingly desperate, has been trying to reach Onoda for years. In 1959, he is officially declared dead in absentia. But the raids on Lubang Island keep happening. Farmers are terrorized. Livestock are taken. At least 30 Filipino civilians die over the course of Onoda's campaign, men and women who had absolutely nothing to do with a war that ended before some of them were born. Japanese officials drop more leaflets. They broadcast surrender announcements over loudspeakers set up at the jungle's edge. In 1959, they send his aging brother Toshio to the island to call out to him through a megaphone. "Hiru, the war is over. Please come home." The jungle answers with silence. Onoda hears his brother's voice. He recognizes it. He doesn't move, because every one of these gestures, to his trained and locked-down mind, confirms the deception. Why would they go to this much trouble if the war were truly over? The greater the effort to extract him, the more convinced he becomes that he is the last line of Japanese resistance on this island, that he is exactly where he's supposed to be, that his duty is the only thing left. This is what ideology does to a man. It doesn't just shape his beliefs, it becomes the architecture of his reality. The world transforms around him like a dream he cannot see. The Korean War ends, Kennedy is assassinated, men walk on the moon, Vietnam burns, Nixon resigns, Japan becomes an economic powerhouse, and in the jungle of Lubang Island, a man in a decomposing uniform is setting booby traps and sharpening his sword and waiting for orders that will never come from a command structure that no longer exists. He survives by eating coconuts, bananas, and whatever he can forage or steal. He cleans and oils his rifle with almost religious devotion. He keeps a diary. He is, by any clinical measure, completely alone, and yet he does not break. Not because he is superhuman, but because breaking would mean admitting that his entire existence for the last 30 years had been built on a misunderstanding. That is a door he will not open. In early 1974, a young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki arrives on Lubang Island. He is 23 years old. He has told his friends he is going to find 3 things before he comes home: a panda, the abominable snowman, and Hiro Onoda. In that order. He finds Onoda first. Suzuki doesn't come as a military envoy. He comes as a kid with a backpack and the reckless confidence of someone who hasn't yet learned to be afraid. He wanders into the jungle and starts calling out. And somehow, for reasons that remain slightly mysterious, Onoda shows himself. They talk. For days, they talk. Onoda is not hostile. He is measured, intelligent, even warm. But on the question of surrender, he is immovable. He says he will not lay down his arms until he receives a direct order from his commanding officer. Suzuki photographs him, returns to Japan, goes straight to the government, and someone, finally, thinks to find Major Yoshimi Taniguchi. Taniguchi is now 63 years old. He gave up his commission long ago. He runs a small bookshop in a quiet Japanese city. He has, presumably, spent years trying not to think about a young lieutenant he sent into the jungle 30 years ago with orders he can no longer justify. He agrees to go. On March 9, 1974, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, dressed in his old military uniform for the occasion, walks into the Philippine jungle and finds Hiro Onoda. He issues the formal order. All combat activity is to cease immediately. Lieutenant Hiro Onoda stands at attention. He does not cry, he does not collapse. He listens until the order is complete, and then he formally lays down his weapon. He is 52 years old. He has been at war for 30 years. He has not once wavered. He later writes, "I felt like a stranger in a world that had left me behind." President Ferdinand Marcos pardons Onoda for the killings on Lubang Island. It is a complicated grace. 30 Filipino civilians are still dead. Their families do not get a pardon. Onoda returns to Japan and finds a country that doesn't quite know how to feel about him. He is celebrated by some as a symbol of samurai loyalty and unbreakable duty. He is quietly condemned by others as a dangerous relic of an ideology that cost millions of lives. He gives interviews, he writes a memoir, he appears calm, almost philosophical about everything that happened. But Japan feels foreign to him. The country he fought for no longer exists. Not culturally, not politically, not spiritually. So he moves to Brazil. He raises cattle. He builds a new life, quietly, far from the cameras. He returns to Japan in his later years and establishes a nature school for young people, teaching them survival skills and self-reliance in the wild. The irony is almost too much to hold. The man who survived the jungle alone for 3 decades is now teaching children how to light fires and read the land. He dies in January 2014. He is 91 years old. Here is the thing that stays with you. Hiro Onoda was not insane. He was not broken. He was not even wrong, not by the standards of the world he was trained to inhabit. He was, by every measure available to him, doing exactly what a loyal soldier was supposed to do. And that is the most haunting part, because it raises a question that doesn't just apply to Lubang Island or 1945 or Imperial Japan. How many of us are still fighting a war that ended long ago, for beliefs we've never thought to question, toward a victory no one is waiting for? If history is your obsession, subscribe to the Time Thread.